Hey guys, Matt with BleepinJeep. This is the Scorpion Crawler, and I started building this thing back in 2016. It's went through 2 iterations, version 1, and then we went back and upgraded in version 2. I think this is the perfect rock crawler except for 2 items that I would like to change. Today we're going to try to fix one of those. Let me show you what it is. So check this out. Up front we have the Barnes 4-wheel drive truss. And Josh, why did you put ducks all over my axle?
You don't like ducks?
So up front we've got the Barnes 4-wheel drive truss, and that is double shear steering over here. So this is a full hydraulic ram, and the truss is what holds the ram into place. When we set this on, this is where it wanted to be. In hindsight, it kind of hits a lot of things. Whenever I'm coming up to big giant rocks and boulders, this is going to be the first thing that hits. If you take a look in the rear, this is the rear axle, and it's also a Barnes truss, but it was a universal truss, and when we set this one on, we paid a lot more attention and customized it quite a bit for these custom axles that we've got, and we angled it way up, and the reason that we did that is to get as much clearance as possible out of it. And I like this setup a lot better. If you can see, it doesn't hit on the rocks and bash on the rocks as much. It is a rear axle, but what we want to do is make the front axle similar to this. We want to get this flat plate and angle it up as far as possible. That's going to get the steering arms up higher as well and keep this big giant plate from smashing on a lot of stuff. So the first step is just going to be to cut all of that off and start from scratch. We've got another Barnes truss sitting there waiting for us. First, we need to give this thing a wash. It's a bit dirty. There's my power washer right there. Might as well have an electric one at this point.
Straight.
Alright, so I think what we ought to do is just get the plasma torch out. Cut. That's going to be a nasty job.
It's going to be a lot of cutting. Maybe we can just unbolt it and set it back here.
Yeah, I think if we just take it off at the ends here and here, we'll be able to just set it up. But we need to make sure that we're not going to catch anything on fire.
Cover these. Always cover your shock shafts.
Alright, so now we just need to come back with a flat disc. I'll go ahead and cut as much as I can off with the plasma cutter, but then flat disc to smooth this all out just like it was before we welded anything on there, and then we'll start from scratch. Your turn. I feel like I have something on my face.
You do.
I can see something. So if we can just kind of smooth that. Doesn't need to be completely flush, but just kind of flat. And then if we can get that back down to the tube.
That's what we're putting back on. And these are BleepinJeep.com and Amazon?
We sell them on BleepinJeep.com. We improved upon the design, made them smaller, and made them so that you could, there's a little line on here where you can cut along the dotted line if you want to put it on a flat surface, or a rounded surface. Goes right on your axle tube like that. Flat surface, you cut along that little score right there, and then you'll be able to mount it on something flat. And it's the smallest that you can get and still work with your tie downs. I think I hear the lunch lady. She go. It's everybody's favorite lady.
Hi.
The lunch lady.
Yay.
What you got for us today, babe?
We've got okra and roast beef sandwiches with au jus. What was that?
I think Josh is excited.
Is he hungry? You must have him working hard out here. And potatoes.
We've been missing the lunch lady. Although we've always have the lunch lady every day. You guys just don't get to see her because a lot of times we're not working in the shop on a project that we're filming. A lot of times we're just working on stuff that we're not filming.
Okay. So there's that.
She even made us some au jus. Look at that.
You gonna video us eating the whole time?
Yeah.
Okay. That'll be interesting.
That's what they want to see.
They don't care about the builds. They just want to see us eat.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Not your forks over there with the taters, honey.
Alright, axle is cleaned up. Now what we need to do is get this thing situated on there the way that we want it. I put the two side by side here, and you can see that whenever we made this first one, I actually modified it and moved the pumpkin over so that the truss would be centered in the middle of the axle. So this one, I guarantee will not be. We'll need to figure out if that's what we want or if I need to modify this one as well, because I think the way that it sits, the truss is kind of countered to this side, and then your arms for either end for the steering are different lengths. I prefer them to be the same if they can be. That way you can just carry a spare if you needed to carry a spare arm. They're both the same. I think it also looks better, and then you have the same steering as well. So when you turn right and left, if the arms are different lengths, they're going to be slightly different steer angles. Alright, we made some initial cuts right there to get this thing centered on the axle. We made a center line. Let me show them that little trick. You guys might have seen me do this before, but to find this quick center of something, instead of measuring all the way across and trying to do the math, you just mark this one at 27 or somewhat close to the center. You mark this one at 27 as well, and then in between those two marks that you made will be the exact center. So now we need to figure out where we can put the ram. So we're gonna put the ram in here and then figure out how far up this can tilt before it's out of spec with the steering knuckle on that side. But we also need to drop the suspension, so drop the pressure in the shocks and drop the frame down to make sure that the steering isn't going to hit the engine or the frame when it's under flex or when it's under compression. There we go. Oh, you gotta be kidding me. You take the dangerous job and hold everything. All right. It looks like, if anything, the lines are going to be, just need to be turned down or moved. But this still brought it down quite a bit. So this plate needs to go up and angle up at the same time.
Yeah, it's got to angle up for sure.
Your butt's in the way. Alright guys, we looked it over, talked about it. I think that's the final spot right there. It's going to be nice and tucked up. Just barely clears everything. The lines are a little squished, but we're going to move those around a little bit. We marked it with Sharpie where it's going to sit. We even marked every single one of these. We're going to try to get everything back in place where it is, but we need to pull it off to adjust this. So if you look, So on the truss, this is the piece that drops out so you can take your diff cover off and get inside there. But since we have a custom axle, everything is custom, we need to move this over about an inch or an inch and a half and re-weld everything so that it drops out from here and not over here, because you can see if we were to use it right where it's at, you're not going to be able to take the diff cover off.
This is made for a Super Duty axle. If you have a Super Duty axle, this will be centered on your Super Duty axle, but the axle tubes on this are different lengths than a stock Super Duty. That's why it's not centered. That's why we're having to move it.
Yeah, this is a custom fusion axle with custom length everything, so I have to customize. Just like a custom rock crawler, you got to customize everything. So this, it feels like deja vu, but I marked these two arrows here, so if you line those arrows up, what we need to do is cut, and we need to add metal to this side. It'll make sense when we get there. Good. So this is a special piece of metal. This is my plasma edge. See that? Plasma edge. That's what I use to make straight edges. Alright, you may have seen us do this before, but everything has to be centered. So we draw a center line here, we're going to have to draw a center line on the ram, we're going to have to draw a center line here, and try to match everything up before we start tacking things together. Because right now, the ram looks like it's fine, but maybe the tires aren't straight, maybe they're turned to the right or to the left. That would really suck to weld everything like that, and then you're always driving down the road crooked. The truss needs to go to the left, the ram needs to go to the right. Yeah, that's it right there. So it's hard to tell with the camera, but that line lines up with that line, lines up with that line. All right.
Zip tie.
So these wings go in here and they brace the brace, and the ram travels through here. But since we've customized where this sits, we have to customize the wings. There's like two paint sticks, you know? Mm-hmm. And he was trying to get something into a corner perfectly, like a shelf.
Yeah.
Into a corner of a wall that wasn't square. So I put the two sticks and hot glued them together. And then traced that onto the shelf and cut it.
Yeah.
And then it fit perfect. That's kind of exactly what we need here.
Two pieces of metal.
If we just cope this one. Okay.
You guys tell us the easy way to do that. Make sure you do that in the comments. Tell us what we did wrong.
Well,
ouch.
That's hot. We could have made a cardboard template, but we'd have the same issue where you're just guessing. And then, technically, it should fit. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Alright, we made some good progress there, although we forgot what time it was. It's about 8 o'clock. Josh usually leaves at 6:30. Josh, you're in trouble.
No, I'm in trouble.
Welcome back to Trucks Driving By.
That was the oldest concrete truck I've ever seen.
Was that a concrete truck?
Yeah.
Alright guys, it's the next day. Josh has been out here this morning before I got out here testing and fitting and testing and fitting. And he did a good job. Look how close this front axle is now to the motor. Everything is, what is that, about an inch? Less than an inch?
Less than an inch.
So everything is going to clear, it looks like, as long as we don't jump this thing off of a cliff and compress more than it's supposed to. Okay. So this plate, he's got some nuts welded on the back there. That'll be good because it is very tight now with the cylinder mounted all the way forward. We need to put this in the press and flatten that out, and then we'll weld some nuts, maybe punch some holes and weld some nuts here so that that gets bolted like so. It was supposed to actually sit like that, but now we've shortened everything up, which is nice. Alright, so we need to bend this outward, and this is the Swag off-road finger brake. So we're going to put that in there, and what it does is it basically just puts a bend in it, just like you would find on a piece of angle iron. So you can go all the way 90, or you can just go slightly, which is what we're going to do. Set the spot.
Yep.
So try that.
We'll try that.
Okay, what we're looking for is flat contact on there and here at the same time. We're going to cut a hole with the plasma torch this size, and then we're going to weld that flush so that it bolts flush instead of up and half an inch. Are you making a burrito?
I'm cooking lunch.
Alright, so this is pretty thick, but when you're punching through steel with the plasma cutter, you want to start in the middle and then spiral out, because when you punch a hole, it creates a pretty big hole, so you don't want to start that on the edge. Now I just need to open those up until these will barely fit down in there. Alright, we've got those tacked in. We're going to weld those in place. Hopefully they don't move, and hopefully I don't burn through them. And then we should be good to go. We'll kind of ground that down smooth again, and we should have basically 3 threaded holes. We could have just threaded the holes, but we'd have to drill them in here, and we don't have a mag drill, so that makes things a little more difficult. Okay, moment of truth. Will it all bolt down? Let's find out.
Okay.
There it is. And you doubted.
I didn't doubt.
You doubted.
I knew it was possible.
I know you doubted. So right here, we beat on this thing on the last one pretty good, and it bent a little bit here and here. And the new ones, they have ribs on here. And so we're going to take and put a flat piece of steel behind this, because we didn't get the upgraded version. We bought this like a year ago, and it's just been sitting. Alright, next up, pull this off and weld it. Actually, that's what we were going to do, but with the way that it sits like this, I think I'll be able to raise it up on the lift and stand comfortably and weld all the pieces without pulling it off. That'll keep it from shaping like a banana and fighting trying to get it back on, because I'll be able to tack everything into place on the axle to keep it from bending while it's getting hot. Right?
Banana.
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 What are you doing?
I don't know.
Take this with you in case you find any bears up there.
I don't think Matt showed you guys this, but we got to blow off the roof pretty often because these trees, right now it's not leaves, right now it's all the little stringy orange pollen things, but they clog up the gutters. And this roof, it gets sketchy down towards the edge. This is pretty slick. So we set up a cable. This is all climbing gear. This attaches to me, and this that attaches there. And as long as this cable hasn't stretched, it should let me go pretty much right down to the edge without falling down there and blow the leaves out of the gutter. And then as you go along, that just slides along that cable. Yay!
Alright, now we've got our BleepinJeep axle tie down tabs. I'm going to center that right there. Weld one side to the truss, weld the other side here to the C, and that'll be the perfect location to tie down to the trailer. It's basically just like we had it, just had to clean up some stuff and going to re-weld it in the same spot. If you really get after it with your paint jobs, I would have just slathered paint right over all of that weld goo.
Then it'll all come back off, and then it'll rust.
And then you just paint it again. You guys remember the secret to cutting a tube like this straight all the way around? I told Josh once. The secret is to cut it straight. How you making out with the paint job?
A lot of fumes.
Are you smelling it on purpose?
No.
Alright, you see that steering arm right there? That goes right here in double shear fashion. The problem is we moved it from being in the center all the way to the top. So take a look over here. Now what we're going to have is a spacer here, the heim all the way up at the top here, and then I've cut this down the same length as the spacer, and we need to weld this back up. When you're tacking like that, I messed up right there. You need to hold that for a couple seconds after you tack, because if you pull it away, then the gas dissipates too fast and you get a little doodad like that. Whereas if you hold it there, it shields. The shielding gas is able to shield and doesn't do that. Alright, let's see. I'm going to turn that up a little bit. Whenever the kids were little, I made up a game, and I told them it was the claw game. And I had to go like this and try to get it just perfect. And then when they were ready, they would go down and try to get it in the hole.
Is that right? How good were they at it?
Pretty good. Oh, that's hot. Try that without burning myself this time. Finally. Oh, come on. It works. It's just not perfect.
You need perfection.
It's almost perfect. So close. Alright guys, it's the next day. Everything is still a little tacky, actually a lot tacky. But we're going to set this in there. We need to get the Jeep off the lift. So we're going to set this in there, bolt it down, and try to get things put back together. Anything that's black, don't touch it.
There is wet paint on the top of that paint can. Whoa!
So yesterday, we did a little yard work, and got some leaves and stuff in there. Joshua. Okay. Alright, so now we're going to do an alignment with the BleepinJeep alignment tool, because when we welded this ram back in, it was slightly off of where it was, but that affects it big time out at the edges. So we just got the ram perfectly centered, and I marked that, so it's 4.5 inches here, 4.5 inches here, and then we need to adjust these arms, because if you'll notice, the ram is centered, but the Jeep is turning to the right. So that means this arm needs to get shorter, this arm needs to get longer. Okay, so these are the BleepinJeep alignment tools. You can get these on BleepinJeep.com, and they have the instructions written right on them, so you can do the math for your toe in. And basically they just go right in place of where the wheels would go, and then you measure from side to side. And you can also use this to get everything straight and parallel as well. Alright guys, we spent a little bit of time there getting everything lined up. What we were trying to do is make sure that the ram was in the center of its throw. The left and right was centered on the axle, and the toe was the same front to rear. So it's about 74.5 inches here and 74.5 inches there. We did a little bit of toe in, and we are set to put the wheels back on. We need to let some paint dry, because I kept on getting sticky fingers. Alright guys, let's check it out at full droop. Josh, can you help us out?
Yep, what do you need?
Okay. Man, that is a tight squeeze, but everything seems to fit. Look at that, guys. That is pretty darn cool. We got it way up higher. We got a lot more ground clearance up front. We got it tucked in closer to the axle, so there's less chance of hitting things on it. Now all that's left is to let that paint dry and do a little test off-roading. Oh, and we need some air in the shocks.
Okay, I'm going to add some nitrogen to these ORIs and lift this thing back up. I think I personally might like coilovers a little better, but I gotta admit, for packaging and for this part, being able to set your ride height where you want it, ORIs hands down are a lot easier to deal with, and they work great crawling. And then it gets pretty tedious. It's a lot of going back and forth. It's easier to overfill them and then just let a little bit out and let it sink down, and hopefully you don't overdo it, because then you got to hook back up and raise it back up, and you got to keep putting weight on the front end because it's going to settle and move around, and it's going to settle some more after a day or two anyways, and you might have to go adjust a little bit, but still works out really well. It's a lot nicer than changing springs. All right, ride height's all set. I put this top plate back on and painted it. We'll eventually, I think once the paint dries, we may pull it back off and inlay something into the logo. Put some orange paint in the Barnes logo right here. Orange is Barnes color, and it's also BleepinJeep color.
That is it, right where it went. But getting it to go there is impossible.
Winch time.
Can't see it. Trying to winch up through here, but apparently I got another flat tire, which I already had one today. Guys, we tested this thing hard today. We lost 3 tires, so you can't say that we didn't send it. And the truss did exactly what I wanted it to do, which was nothing. It wasn't in the way. From the looks of it, it didn't even get hit by a rock, so that is perfect. So let me tell you what you want with a rock crawler. Ideally, for the perfect setup with a rock crawler, you want your tires to stick out past the bumper, and what that'll allow you to do is climb brick walls. Basically, you can pull up to a straight up wall and climb it without hitting the bumper. These tires do just that by barely like a half an inch. Also, you want your bumper height to be really high, but you want your center of gravity to be really low. So that means having the vehicle as low as possible to be stable as possible, but the bumper up as high as possible, or no bumper at all, but you still need a winch. So this one is tucked in, very slim. The next thing that you want is high ground clearance. So what that means is just bigger tires basically, and portals if you can afford them. Those are very, very expensive to have though, but a portal will actually put your axle even up higher than this and gear down to the center of the wheel. The next thing that you're looking for is double shear in your steering. So what that means is that there is 2 points of contact here for this bolt. That is much better than just having 1 point. Let's say this was bolted here. It wouldn't be as strong as double shear. This is another example of double shear. So you want to get your tie rod up as high as possible. A lot of vehicles, you know, stock have the tie rod right in line with the axle. If you can get it up as high as possible, the better. And then on this Jeep, we're running full hydraulic steering, so that means that there's no solid connection for the steering. There's no steering box. You have an orbital valve which controls this hydraulic ram which pushes the steering, and if you've got one of those, you want to get it up as high as possible and protected, because these arms come out and they're pretty strong. Josh's Jeep is testament to that because he hits them all the time, and so far so good. But this Barnes truss actually protects those links so that they don't get scarred up. It does add a little bit of weight, but it's give and take whether you want to protect it or leave it out there bare and have the possibility of hitting it on a rock. I didn't put the diff cover piece in here this morning because the paint was still wet actually whenever I left this morning, so I need to get that back in before this thing gets tweaked at all and it won't fit. Josh did a little nice detail there. It's covered in mud now, but he painted the inside of that Barnes logo orange. Oh, there's a little bug right there. And you may be wondering what this thing is. So this is for a suck down winch. If you'd like, you can put your winch onto this and you can use that to suck down. And what that does is when you're climbing something super steep, you can suck that front end down like this so that you're not flipping over backwards, and it also can give you more traction on the front end sometimes. I could continue on and on about the skid plates and the drive shafts and the suspension, but if there's anything that you guys would like a video about on how to set up your Jeep or your rock crawler, please let me know down in the comments. Huge shout out to our Patreons over there. Go check those guys out. They make all of this possible at patreon.com/BleepinJeep. You get early access to these videos and other perks. Go check it out. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video.